Hey, this is Troy Erickson from Email Paramedic, copywriting.org, and the Secrets of Scale podcast. Today, I'm super pumped because I have a rare opportunity to talk to somebody who is literally one of the most sought after copywriters that I heard of when I got into this whole industry. She has over $1 billion in sales to her name for herself and her clients. She also helped a Healthy Directions supplement business hit the equivalent of what today would be $40 million a year. And she's just a really interesting person that I've gotten to talk to at different events. And I'm just really happy to welcome a lot of people's favorite copywriter, Kim Krause Schwalm.
Yay. Thank you. It's great to be here, Troy. And I'm so glad that we got a chance to meet. I think it was about a year or so ago at Copy Accelerator in Tampa, which is around your parts where you're from. Lucky you.
It is, yes. I am right across the bay, probably.
Nice. It's
25 minutes.
beautiful. It's a beautiful area.
Yeah. So, a lot of people have seen you in CA and, around Facebook and all over the place. They've seen your copy, but what they may not know and what they may not have seen is how you got to that point. So could you talk a little bit about how the heck you stumbled into the copywriting world?
Sure. So I always knew I wanted to get into marketing, and I finally got into marketing and was working for a health insurance company, one of the Blue Cross companies. And they were just starting to realize that, hey, we could market insurance directly to consumers and maybe even make some money at it, even though they're supposedly not for profit. To make a long story short, I got my first taste of what direct response marketing was. And this was, we're going back quite a ways, but we, using direct response marketing, built that into a money losing division to by far like the most profitable division of the company. Contributing like 75% of the full company's profits. So from there, I went to Phillips Publishing, which it no longer exists. It was kind of sold off and little different parts, but there are some very well-known pieces that are left. Their financial newsletters and also their health and supplement business, Healthy Directions. So I went to Phillips Publishing, and there we were working with the world's top copywriters. We're talking names that, unfortunately, many of these legends are no longer with us, like the late Jim Rutz, the late Clayton Makepeace, the late Gene Schwartz, who I actually saw speak in a full-day seminar. Gary Bencivenga, who's luckily still with us. These were the level of copywriters that they were working with. And I was a marketer wearing a lot of different hats. As you mentioned, I launched their Healthy Directions business, grew that to the equivalent of 40 million in sales just in the first 3 years. And so coming out of that whole experience, I learned a ton about marketing, specifically direct marketing. I also got to write some copy. It was never my main role, but it was always, a lot of emphasis on being able to write copy, edit copy, understand what good copy was, work with good copywriters. Kind of funny side story. At one point, I was a publisher, and I was the client working with Paris Lampropoulos and David Deutsch when they were kind of starting out. It was just kind of funny. So I learned all the ropes, and then I hit a point there where I felt like, I'd gone back to work after having my first child. I kind of felt like, not going into that whole story because it's a long one, that I'd been mommy tracked. And I looked around and I thought, these copywriters, they live this really great life. The ones that I had gotten to know would tell me how they'd work maybe 4 or 5 hours a day. And obviously I knew they made a lot of money. And I was like, I think I could do this. I really think I could. So I took the leap, and this was in 1998, and I was making $100,000 a year then as a base salary. So I walked out of that 6-figure job. I lined up a retainer arrangement that would guarantee me about 90% of that and only take half my time. In the first year, I made 50% more as a freelance copywriter. So I've been just going strong ever since. I had to work my way up to, writing long form copy, being able to break into, charging royalties, but after about 2-3 years, I was definitely making a whole lot more than I was in my, 50, 60 hour week job. And, so for many, many years, that's pretty much what I did. I just got booked up, a year in advance. I'd write maybe, 5-6 packages a year. Maybe half of those become winners. Again, it's another myth. Even top copywriters, not every single one we write is a huge winner. And started earning royalties. And so about 5 years ago, I started switching out a little bit of my time and more time to training the next generation of copywriters, and everything from having courses to doing mentoring and still keeping my hands in some client work. So I think that's the most condensed time story that I've ever told of my 20 plus year career, but that's pretty much my background right there.
Thank you. That was perfect. That was a good
It's a lot.
overview.
I definitely left a lot of things out.
It's okay. Yeah, it's hard to remember all the things that happened, but
Oh, I remember. It's just you don't want to be here all day.
oh yeah, of course, in a podcast setting. But what gave you the confidence to quit your job if you're making six figures in the 90s? Did you know that you had something that was pretty much, lined up that had almost a 90% guarantee?
Well, like I said, I did have the retainer. So I'm hoping if one of the takeaways for somebody is they kind of feel locked in where they are now, what I did was I used the retainer as that stepping stone, as that bridge. And it was a 6-month arrangement. I had everything obviously written down on paper, always do contracts. And then that person referred me to other people. Right. So then I got my first freelance client from that client. And then by the time I had, we got to the end of that, this person decided to hire a full-time marketing person, which I didn't want to do. I wanted to pursue the freelance stream. I had left things on a positive note with my previous employer, which is another lesson, never burn your bridges. And then I just started doing a lot of freelance work for them. And then it just went from there. And it was mostly referral, word of mouth, because I had worked in a company that so many people move around to other direct response companies, et cetera. So, so much of it was referrals and just getting out to events. And, we're getting back to those opportunities post-COVID. I think that's just still one of the best ways that you can get yourself out there and meet people. And that's just how I just started growing it. But yeah, it did take a certain amount of confidence, I guess. But, I always figured, I had 13 years of really good marketing experience. Launching a business, being a publisher, I was a brand manager for another company. I felt like worst case scenario, I go back and get another job.
Right.
It's a 4-letter word.
Now, yeah, that's a good example of a calculated risk. And
Yes.
A lot of people, sometimes they need to think a little bit more before they pull the trigger on that. But what would you say to somebody who is like, they're in a job right now and they want to start a freelance career, but maybe they want to go work inside of a larger company, whether as a copywriter or something similar, just so they can get more experience before they go out on their own? What's your opinion there?
I think that's a brilliant move, depending on your circumstances. I think that I would actually recommend that for anybody. And, I know that we were going to maybe get into a little bit about why you want to know more than just how to write good copy. A big part of my success has been that I understand the full marketing picture. And that's why I wanted to talk about, some of the things I did earlier in my career, because it gave me that, like, here's how copy fits into the whole picture, right? And so when I work with my clients, I'm not just an order taker and here's your copy. I'm helping them come up with what's the best strategy. And you know what, you might want to do 3 more things like this. I might want to do that. And actually, sometimes it means I can actually charge more because now I've got more work. But it's more importantly, I can ensure the success of what we do because I have good input to provide, like whether it's structuring the actual offer or, those kinds of things. So it gives me a chance to get bigger winners more often because I can bring that marketing background to it. So I think it's like, and especially, and you're getting paid, and you're probably going to get some benefits or whatever. And so, yeah, I think it's a really smart move, but you got to be choosy, pick the right company. A lot of times I've seen, unfortunately, really good people just lose their jobs because, especially a lot of companies these days, there's trouble with the economy or just really things that are just come out of the blue, and you can end up suddenly finding yourself unemployed. So I would suggest always get employment contracts, everything in writing, just like you would if you were working with a client. Keep your samples, handy, take screenshots, etc. But yeah, I think it's a good move for depending on where you are in your career and the company, but I think it would give you an instant like MBA equivalent of copywriting. I think one other quick thing too is just watch out for non-competes and other NDA language and stuff like that, because you don't want to lose like 2 years of your life and you can't even show a sample, or you don't want to be like, oh, I just, now I can't work with another supplement business for 3 years, so things like that. You've got to watch out for those kinds of things.
Yeah, I like what you said too. It's, you have to make sure that you're keeping track of things, because something happens and you can't work with them anymore. Did you just waste the last 2 years, or did you build an asset over the last 2 years? And sure, it may not be a financial asset, but it's knowledge and maybe a portfolio or just knowing what to do in a certain situation. So that's a really good point.
I mean, it's a great way to get that quick education. If you are already pretty established, I would be very wary of it. I would still keep maybe some other clients going on the side, because there's a reason why Dan Kennedy says 1 is the most dangerous number in business. And I have seen it happen. I've never done exclusives. I've had other people, I mean, I'm talking going back many years, some very well-known copywriters who would go exclusive, and then they'd suddenly be like, oh my gosh, all my client work dried up the last 2 years. And they're reaching out to me. And, so yeah, it's like, hey, you got an overflow. And, so you just don't want to, you don't have to start all over again. If you've built a freelance business already, keep in touch with those clients, at least do something part-time maybe to keep those relationships going.
Yeah. Now, here's an interesting question. So a lot of times people fear, especially if they're more entrepreneurial minded, they fear that when they go to their job, they're going to be put in a box. And a lot of times they feel that they can't bring up certain ideas to their supervisor, to their boss, because they're just so boxed in and they're only supposed to do one thing, and their ideas and opinions aren't really valued in their workplace. Now, obviously, you can avoid some of that by, in the interview, like paying attention to how they act as well. But what's some advice that you would give to somebody who is maybe working at a job and they're, somewhat receptive to new ideas? Are you bringing those up all the time? Are you asking permission? Are you going in and just doing it? What is the best way to kind of broaden your permissions and the things that you're allowed to do and experiment with?
I think my experience is people tend to put more of these restrictions on themselves. So sometimes these are self-imposed limitations. So when you change your mindset about that, you realize you're the one that's hemming yourself in. I know, I mean, it could be that you are in this really restrictive, controlling boss environment. In that case, it's like time to think about, moving on somewhere else, or maybe somewhere else within the company. There's a better fit, with a different boss who would give you more, freedom. But most of the companies, and again, it's been so long since I was an actual employee, but the companies that I've worked for have had a much more of an entrepreneurial viewpoint of, let's try new things. Like the president of the company that the consumer division that I worked for at Philips, I remember he used to say, if you're not failing enough, you're not trying enough new things. That was like such an important philosophy that I think everybody felt there. And that is one reason why that division went from 100 million to like 300 million, during like 4 or 5 years. And it was because we were allowed to just flop, fail, 5 or 6 times. What did you learn from it? What did you learn from it? We did monthly lessons learned in our management meetings. Everybody was allowed to fail, but then, you get the huge winner, but there's too many companies that are just like, they are constraining their own growth when they don't allow employees to take risk.
Yeah, I like what you said there, because like for me personally, other than, like in high school and college a little bit, I've never had like a real job post-college. So my mind has always gone to like, yeah, don't have limiting beliefs, just go do things and see what happens. But yeah, that's a good point too. A lot of times people say that their employer won't let them do certain things, but it all starts within. So
yeah, I think sometimes people are afraid to take a risk. And again, it could be them, their mindset, or it could be the mindset of the company, which is not a good. I mean, I saw that particular company after I left, different people came in and took over. They were not people of the same mindset. They were more of, let's just keep doing what we've been doing. Let's do what we know works. Well, what happens to the rest of the world? The rest of the world keeps moving forward. they kind of missed the boat on a lot of online stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And again, it's like, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're like too afraid to fail, you will fail.
Yeah, it's a lot of people make fun of mindset, but it's like there's so much of it that is core to who you are as a person and not just in work. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. Now, you mentioned a lot of A-listers and like really old school copywriters right at the beginning of this that you had the chance to learn from or like work beside. Who are the people that have inspired you the most to not just get to where you are today, but to like take the entrepreneurial leap?
Entrepreneurial leap. You mean in terms of what I'm doing with my own list and courses, or the copywriting?
Yeah, more so breaking away from, a regular job and going and betting on yourself and eventually
Yeah.
teaching.
Well, I was in this situation where I had, really had a lot of success at Phillips Publishing, and there was a whole new contingent of people kind of moving in, and I launched a whole supplement line, and then I launched my first child, as I like to say, and then I came back. And it was like, oh, we stuck you over here. And I was kind of like, what the hell's going on? Do you know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think when you're faced with that, I mean, I found myself grieving, for my career at this young age. And I was like, what the hell's going on? Like, I've just been nonstop successful and this isn't right. And so, yeah, I think I got some motivation from that. Like, F this shit, I'm going to just, I'm going to like take the leap. And like I said, the worst case scenario is I've got all this great experience. I'm out looking for another job. In fact, I did interview for some jobs too. And I was just like, nah, I'm going to try this. Just going to go ahead and give it a try. As far as, getting more into having my own list, and which I'll tell people, how you can get on it, at the end of this call, and having some of my courses and my mentoring programs. And I've mentored some really, really great up and coming copywriters over the last 3-4 years. It's just been an incredible experience. It's been something I have found personally very fulfilling. But yeah, it's kind of funny, but I think it was back in 2016, Ben Settle, I met him for the first time, and he was like, why aren't you putting yourself out there? Why aren't you selling any, your knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. And I was just like, I don't know, like, I just was perfectly happy to just be this semi-invisible person cranking out controls, and but I found that I was missing wearing that marketing hat, that I wore for so many years. So yeah, it just kind of started as like, well, I don't know, I'll just give this a try, see what happens. And then it just kind of morphed and to more and more things. And so it's fun. So I feel like I'm using a whole lot of skills that I wasn't using when everybody wanted me to be that unicorn that could write like a long form sales page or direct mail promo and, get a control. And that's kind of what they want. They don't want to hear about, oh, but what are you doing on retention or whatever? I could probably help them with that. It's like, no, you're the unicorn that can do this, So yeah, I kind of missed that whole marketing hat. So yeah, it's been fun to merge my skills, help other copywriters be able to enjoy more freedom, better earnings, the kind of the lifestyle that I've really enjoyed the last 20 plus years, being able to make it more on what my goals were, at least for many years, which I only wanted to work 20, 30 hours a week. I mean, I would have made twice as much, if I wanted to work twice as much, but I wanted to just work when my kids were at school. I wanted to be the ones to take them there and pick them up. I wanted to do the mom thing and, but still have this really satisfying, well-paying, interesting, engaging career that I enjoyed. And then, of course, they're all grown up now. So I'm like, last several years, it's like, now I have more time to mentor other people and work on my business and all that. So that's kind of been my journey and my why, for getting into copyright. A lot of people do it for a lot of reasons. Some people want to be, ultra wealthy, and you can do that because you can learn a skill and then build a business and launch something, so there's a lot of different paths you can do, but sometimes it really is a lifestyle thing. It's a balance thing. I'll also say for a lot of women and men, it still kind of sucks, in the corporate world. You don't get a lot of freedom when you need to have it, so, I mean, this way I'm in charge,
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because just yesterday I saw a post from my friend Ed Ray, and he said some people are so broke all they have is money, and I was like,
Yes, I
wow,
love
that
that.
is very powerful, and
Well,
it just shows you that copywriting and really anything similar is just an avenue to so much freedom and the things that matter the most. And sure, like I don't want to make people think money is like bad and evil. It's just a resource, and it's a resource to do a lot of cool things with. So.
it
I think
is.
it's
It
awesome
it
that you're
gives you.
sharing that with people.
I think that that's a really important thing. Like, I'm not going to sit here and lie to somebody and say, "Hey, copywriting, anybody can do copywriting, and you can make $1 million a year." I mean, there's certain companies that say that. It is hard to be successful at copywriting. You really have to put the work into it. But B, it's not like you said. It's not just about the money. It's about what kind of lifestyle do you want. I mean, I literally traveled, I don't know, 3 months last year. Haven't done that since 2019 because of this little thing called COVID, but I did it back in 2019 as well. And, you know, and then again, like I said, I was like pretty much done with work every day, at like 3 p.m. for many years, because that's when I would get my kids. I would hire out housework, laundry, but if it was like the time with my kids, I wanted that. I didn't want to hire that out. I mean, when they were little babies, I needed to work. I would have a nanny, obviously. But yeah, I would, be the one to spend that time with them, hear their stories in the car about their day. We'd take at least a couple of nice family vacations every year. And, again, copywriting gave me that freedom. Somebody had a sick day or had to go to the doctor. It wasn't like this massive crisis.
Right. Yeah. And I'll get more in a second into how you're helping other people kind of do the same thing. But one question I wanted to ask too, a lot of successful people in anything in life are very humble when you ask them about their biggest wins. But was there a specific moment or a specific win you've had where you realize you're like, yeah, you know what? I'm really good at this copy thing.
Well, I mean, I think I might have put this in the copywriting.org interview that I did, but without naming names. There's a client that I've written several controls for, over the last 7 years, of which at least 5 out of the 7 are still running as controls. And he was telling me that they'd spent a significant amount of money, over the past year hiring copywriters. I mean, experienced copywriters, supposedly good, younger copywriters, et cetera. And they just still didn't have a single control from it. And so the only ones that they're strong enough to use for, acquisition and cold traffic were 3 or 4, the 2 of which were mine, and the other 2 written by 70-plus-year-old legendary copywriters who don't even want to write copy anymore. You know what I mean? So it kind of was like, yeah, us old school people, we know what we're doing. And these are all online promos. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that kind of felt kind of like, yeah, damn it, But yeah, I've definitely had a lot of big wins over the years. And I think, too, that a lot of people, may have heard about, that get attributed is when I beat the late Jim Rutz, got a control for this flagship financial newsletter that kind of put me on the map as a copywriter. Then I beat him again with like 2 years later, kind of the same product, which was kind of fun.
The rematch.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a longer story, but yeah, they launched with a new editorial team. So then they went and hired him to write another whole promo, paid him another $100,000. And then they were like, not as happy with it. So like, hey, you think you could just update your old control? I'm like, sure, I can do that for $3,500 or whatever I charged them just for the updates. Boom, beat him again. So, yeah, they could have saved a lot of money if they just asked me. And then I beat, and then, yeah, Brian Kurtz was like, oh, you beat Jim Rutz. Well, let me hire you. And then I beat Paris from Papas, whatever,
It's a cool last
Lampropolis's
name.
tax hotline promo, which no one had ever been able to beat for 7 years. And I beat that like on the second try. The first one came close. The second one, I was like, you know what, let me tweak the headline. Sure enough, we got a winner, which is another good takeaway here, because all these things are full of takeaways. If at first you don't succeed, try again. I mean, there's a reason for that saying, and clients need to hear this as well as copywriters. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, the first promo I wrote for the financial newsletter was kind of a miserable bomb, but there was, they thought there was a lot of good things to the copy. So they actually hired me all over again 6 months later. And then that one was the one that beat Jim Rutt's. So, had they just written me off, that wouldn't have happened. And then with Boardroom, you have to be like at least 15% better or whatever it is than their control to actually get the control. Well, I was right within that range, but not enough. And I went to them and said, look, let's just try another test. I won't charge you for a cover test or whatever, headline lead test. And sure enough, we did that and they were open to it and I got the control. So, and then that happened one or two other times. So I'm just saying, it's really smart, just because you have a failure the first time or a copywriter doesn't get a winner the first time, it's really short-sighted to just say, that's it, we'll never work with you again, or we'll just start all over from scratch with something. Because you can usually, I think a lot of people know this more now, especially everything's so data-driven. Not that it always hasn't been, but, it's just a smart thing to do. Like, give it another try. Is it the offer? Is it, what are the biggest needle movers that you can test? Change this, change that, and you may get yourself a winner.
Yeah, absolutely. Start at the beginning, see what's wrong, keep going down, and try to put something out that's better. And a lot of times, like I've written a couple myself. I don't write a lot of long form, but when I have, the second version, for whatever reason, is always a magic number. But anyway. Now,
but
when
you
it
can
comes
write a
to
whole long form in just 2 versions, or you're talking about the second test of
the
it?
second one crushes the first one.
Okay.
The last 2 times
I was going to say, if you're writing it all in 2 drafts and you're done, I'm like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, I'm not that good.
Kudos to you.
Now, when it comes to coaching students of yours, what are some of the main things that you tell them about? And I guess you can kind of give an overview of your program as well, and the main things that you hit on.
Well, with the coaching, I'm kind of doing that more one-on-one these days.
Okay.
I don't have the formal mentoring group this year, but I do have one-on-one students. And again, it kind of depends on their level, but I think especially if you're just kind of starting out or you're fairly new, I think having a practice where you study a control every day, you analyze it, you maybe even hand copy it. I know there's a whole program that does that, but you can do this on your own. You maybe take it to another level, depending on your experience and knowledge. But just constantly looking at it, studying it, try to write something from scratch every day, create exercises for yourself. I mean, ideally you have client work, get client work. Don't work for free, but like try to get actual projects, because even if you're starting at the kind of near the bottom in terms of what you're able to charge, like that's how you're going to learn the fastest, by doing actual work. Those are just a few of the things. It's funny because I did just have like an hour and a half long session with somebody earlier today, and those are some of the things I was sharing with him. But again, this is kind of, you get into mindset where you don't want to take on something if you don't know anything about copywriting at all. You don't want to sell yourself as a copywriter, but on the other hand, you don't want to doubt yourself that you can't rise to a challenge, if that makes any sense. So like, let's say you've gone through some courses, you've written some copy, but maybe you're like wondering, well, I don't know if I'm qualified to do that particular project. Sometimes you just got to stretch yourself and go for it a little bit. So, that was something that I just talked about with this mentee today, but I think it applies to a lot of people, and kind of a funny story is Carlene Anglais Cole, who's a good friend of mine. We had worked at Phillips together and we became freelance copywriters around the same time. And she used to live near me. And I just remember we were starting out our first year or so, and we'd talk about what projects we were working on. And sometimes we were just like, yeah, I'm not really sure what I'm doing here, but I know I'm going to figure it out. And we'd joke about how we were getting paid to learn, and I mean, and we were turning out some pretty good copy, I'm sure even then, but again, it's just like, sometimes that's how you grow as a copywriter. You're going to challenge yourself. I mean, you're not going to promise, oh, I can write a 24-page sales letter if you've never even written an email before, but you want to, don't be afraid to stretch yourself a little bit. If you know that, you can do a good job, you're just going to have to put your all into it, and maybe even get somebody to help review it or whatever it is you need to do. There's so many more resources today than there were when I was starting out. So many people you can learn from. So I that trying to fit a
Yeah.
lot of different advice in there, but yeah, don't constrain
That
yourself.
was good.
Don't
Yeah.
constrain
One of
yourself.
my first mentors told me, like, hey, even if you're not making a lot of money, just remember that if you're working with a good client, you could argue that you owe the client money because you're learning from them. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to complain anymore. So I stopped complaining, and eventually my income kept going up by itself.
Yeah.
So I like that example. So
Yeah. And again, this is another reason to potentially think about, if you're really just starting out, getting in with a good company initially and building your training as well as your network. Because like I said, that network I tapped huge, that led to so many different referrals. Just, oh, Kim's a copywriter now, and tell everybody, that you're a copywriter now.
now, do you find that when you help people one-on-one, do you end up doing more tactical stuff or more mindset stuff?
I think the tactical and the mindset are very much interrelated. So I don't think I separate it out that much. I mean, it can even just be something as simple as, well, should I be asking for a 50% advance? And some of that is strictly mindset even. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Like, would you have a kitchen remodeler come in and like go get all his equipment and all this and supplies, and you wouldn't give him any money up front? Like, of course, and yeah, so it's like just thinking of yourself, like, yeah, of course, this is how I work. I require a 50% advance before work begins, and I need that to hold time in my schedule. Like just getting comfortable saying those things. Part of that is mindset. That's, tapping into some inner confidence that you need to draw upon.
Yeah, totally. And a lot of times it's just in your own head, and the client's like, yeah, of course I'll do that. Of course I'll pay you twice what you were about to tell me. So
Yeah.
of
If
course
they
they
say
don't know it
yes
was
too
twice.
fast, you probably asked for too little.
Yes, exactly. Now, I heard that you have a checklist for all of our viewers and
I
listeners.
do.
Can you briefly tell us about that?
Sure. Maybe I need a mindset one too. Now you're giving me some
Maybe.
ideas. But no, this one is about copy, and it's actually 5 checklists in one. It includes 2 checklists for doing research, and then 3 related to your promo, whatever kind of promo this can work with. And it's called the Ultimate A-List Copywriters Promo Checklist. And you can get it for free when you go to kimschwalm.com or copyinsiders.com if you don't know how to spell my last name. But then that will let you become one of my copy insiders. And I do send out a free e-zine called Copy Insiders every, maybe once every week or so, along with other emails that many people find interesting and entertaining. And so, yeah, I would love to have you on my Copy Insiders list, and just go to copyinsiders.com or kimschwalm.com.
Yeah, and best of all, if they don't know how to spell your name, it's in the title of the video, and then you just add
There you go. Yeah, and I think Kim Krause Schwalm.com works too, but there's no reason to type all that. Just right.
That's true. That's true.
KimSchwalm.com will get
Gotta
you
keep
there.
it simple. But Kim, thank you so much.
Oh, you're
It is
welcome.
a pleasure to hear your story, and like you literally threw in so many little nuggets throughout this entire thing that I could probably write a book about it. But hopefully our listeners wrote their own book worth of notes.
Good.
And if they didn't, they should listen again. But
well, it was a pleasure to be here. The time flew by, and I hope everybody got at least some good, valuable takeaways.
All right. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for listening to the Secrets of Scale podcast.